The alien woman stood at the center of the council chamber, her claws digging into the smooth metal floor. The lights above her flickered softly, reacting to the sharp rise in her biosigns. Around her, representatives of 20 different species sat in raised platforms, their bodies tense, their eyes fixed on her with fear, judgment, or open dislike. She had waited for hours. She had followed every rule. She had bowed her head, lowered her voice, and spoken in the calm, diplomatic tone the council demanded. None of it had mattered. They had rejected her request again. Her homeworld was burning. Her people were scattered across space, hunted and enslaved by the Vorak Dominion. Entire cities had been erased. Children had been taken, elders left to die in vacuum-sealed ruins. And still, the council spoke of procedure, risk, and neutral balance. Something inside her finally broke. She lifted her head, her eyes glowing a bright, furious amber, and screamed. The sound was not just noise. It carried pain, grief, and rage all woven together. It echoed through the chamber, shaking the thin glass walls and triggering warning lights. Several delegates recoiled. One species released a cloud of defensive spores. Another reached for a concealed weapon. "Silence her," one counselor shouted. "Remove the subject," another demanded. Security drones began to move, hovering closer, their weapons powering up. To the council, anger was danger. Emotion was instability. Instability was a threat. The alien woman did not care anymore. "You sit on comfort made from stolen stars," she screamed, her voice breaking but not weakening. "While my people die, you debate balance, you debate timing, you debate nothing." Her species had no tears. Anger was how they mourned. Anger was how they begged. The drones moved closer. Then a human stood up. He was easy to miss compared to the others. No bright colors, no sharp spines, no towering height. Just a human male in a dark uniform, seated far back, his hands resting calmly at his sides. His name was Elias Rowan, an envoy from Earth, sent mostly as an observer. Humanity was still new to the council, still considered emotionally unpredictable and physically fragile. When he stood, several counselors turned toward him in surprise. "What are you doing, human?" a reptilian delegate hissed. "Sit down." Elias did not raise his voice. He did not signal the drones. He did not look afraid. Instead, he slowly stepped down from his platform and walked toward the alien woman. Gasps spread through the chamber. She turned toward him, startled. Humans were known for violence when provoked. She expected shouting, orders, maybe even a weapon. But Elias stopped several steps away from her and did something no one else had done. He lowered himself. Not fully to the ground, but enough to show he was not a threat. His posture softened. His hands were open and empty. "I hear you," he said quietly. The words were simple, but they cut through the noise like a blade. The chamber fell into a stunned silence. Even the drones hesitated, their targeting systems unsure. The alien woman stared at him, her breathing heavy. Her anger was still there, burning hot, but now it had nowhere to strike. "You hear nothing," she snapped. "You are all the same." "Maybe," Elias replied calmly, "but I want to understand what made you scream." The council erupted. "This is improper." No one had asked her that since she entered the chamber. "Karith," she said. "Karith," Elias repeated carefully, making sure he said it right. "What happened to your people?" Her claws trembled. For a moment she looked as if she might scream again. But instead her voice cracked. "They came at dawn," she said. "The sky burned. Our defenses failed in 1 hour. We sent distress signals. No one came." The council tried to interrupt, but Elias raised one hand, not sharply, not in command, just enough to ask for space. "Let her speak," he said. Something about the way he said it made the drones pull back slightly. Karith continued, her words pouring out now that the barrier had broken. She spoke of fleeing ships shot down as examples, of families separated in the chaos, of her own sister captured while buying time for refugees to escape. As she spoke, her anger changed. It did not disappear, but it sharpened, focused, turning into something clearer and more painful. Elias listened. He did not interrupt. He did not argue. He did not offer empty comfort. He simply stayed there, grounded and calm, absorbing every word. Around them, the council watched in uneasy silence. They had never seen this approach before. To them, emotion was something to suppress or punish. Humans, they were learning, did something different. When Carith finally stopped speaking, the chamber felt heavier, as if the truth itself had weight. Elias nodded slowly. "You didn't scream because you wanted to attack us," he said. "You screamed because no one would listen." "Yes," she said bitterly, "and now it is too late." "Not yet," Elias replied. A tall avian counselor leaned forward. "Human, you overstep your authority." Elias turned then, finally facing the council. His expression was serious but not hostile. "With respect," he said, "you are misreading the situation. Carith's anger is not a threat. It is a signal, a warning." "Anger leads to war," the counselor said. "Sometimes," Elias agreed, "but ignoring it leads to extinction." The words hung in the air. Human history filled Elias' mind. Plagues, wars, near-collapse events that had almost wiped them out. Humanity had survived not because they lacked emotion, but because they learned to face it, name it, and act before it became unstoppable. "You fear her anger," Elias continued. "But you should fear what happens when people stop shouting." Carith looked at him, something new flickering in her eyes. Hope, fragile and dangerous. Security drones hovered uncertainly, awaiting new orders. The council withdrew into rapid private communication, exchanging signals too fast for most species to follow. Finally, the central speaker spoke again. "The human will be allowed to continue," it said. "For now." Elias exhaled quietly. He turned back to Carith. "You're not alone," he said. "Not anymore." For the first time since her world fell, Carith believed that might be true. Far beyond the station, unseen by any of them, Vorak warships adjusted their course, drawn by rumors of political fracture and opportunity. The scream had already changed everything, even if no one yet understood how. And this was only the beginning. The alien woman, Carith, lowered her claws from the metal floor, though her fingers still trembled slightly. Her chest heaved with the force of the emotions she had just unleashed. She had expected fear, perhaps even punishment, but what she had not expected was understanding. Not from anyone, and certainly not from a human. Elias Rowan remained calmly in front of her, shoulders relaxed, eyes steady, and hands open in a gesture that was almost gentle. The council chamber still buzzed with tension. Delegates whispered among themselves, exchanging rapid signals and scanning each other with suspicion. Carith noticed that many were trying not to look at her. It was as if they feared that even a glance would trigger another outburst. Elias, however, did not flinch. He remained the calm center of the storm, and she found herself oddly drawn to that calmness, even as her rage lingered. "They do not understand," Carith said softly, more to herself than to anyone else. Her voice was raw from screaming, yet there was a certain sharpness in it, a blade hidden inside words. "All they see is anger. They never see the reason behind it." Elias nodded slowly. "Anger is easier to fear than to listen to," he said. "But it can be useful if we know how to read it." His eyes met hers directly, not pitying, not challenging, simply acknowledging the pain she carried. For the first time since she had arrived on the station, Carith felt a thread of relief weave through her anger. Someone was listening, truly listening. The council, still recovering from the shock of her scream and Elia's calm intervention, had begun to retreat into their private deliberations. Carith knew that nothing would change overnight. Council procedures moved slower than glaciers, and she had already seen how her people had been erased while politicians debated neutrality. But Elias had opened a small door, a narrow path through which her voice could be heard. "We cannot waste time," she said, stepping closer to him. Her voice was quieter now, but every word carried urgency. They do not understand the speed of the Vorak advance. Every moment we wait, more die. Elias tilted his head thoughtfully. Then we must act quickly, he said. But we also need strategy. If we rush, we may provoke more violence. If we speak clearly, if we show them the truth, we may gain allies even here. Her amber eyes widened slightly. No human had ever spoken like this to her before. Most humans had tried to calm her anger with platitudes or worse, had ignored it entirely. Elias seemed to understand that anger was not a weakness. It was a signal, a tool, a weapon if handled properly. How? Karith asked. How can words stop war? How can the council care when my people are already scattered? Her voice shook, a mixture of frustration and the faintest flicker of hope. I have nothing left to lose. Then we start with what you do have, Elias replied. Your story, your knowledge. The council may be slow, but truth is harder to ignore than lies. Show them what is real. Show them what they are failing to see. Karith considered his words. It was reckless, dangerous, but it was also the first plan that felt like it might work. She nodded, taking a deep breath to steady herself. I will speak, she said, her voice firm, but they must understand that this is not just my fight. It is the fight of every species that values life. Elias gave a small, encouraging smile. Exactly. And you will not speak alone. I will be there, translating, amplifying, supporting. Humanity knows what it is to fight for survival. The next hours passed in a whirlwind. Karith and Elias prepared a presentation for the council, combining visual data, recorded communications from the Vorak attacks, and detailed accounts from survivors. Karith's rage had not disappeared. It fueled her precision. Every fact, every image, every statistic was sharpened by her anger. Yet Elias guided her, helping her shape her story in a way that could pierce through the council's habitual indifference. When the presentation began, the chamber was silent. Karith started by recounting her experiences, showing images of destroyed cities and lost families. The counselors shifted uneasily in their seats. Some species whispered nervously to each other. A few tried to close their eyes, as if blocking the images would make them less real. Elias interjected at key points, calmly translating her words into a tone the council could understand. He emphasized patterns of aggression, the rapid spread of the Vorak fleet, and the failure of current protective measures. He highlighted the human perspective. Humans had faced extinction-level threats before, and they had learned to act decisively, to listen to warnings, and to collaborate across differences. Slowly, the council began to react differently. No longer merely fearful, some delegates began to nod, others leaned forward, scrutinizing the images and data more closely. Karith could feel the subtle shift in energy. Her anger was no longer just a scream. It had become a message that could not be ignored. But the calm did not last long. Sensors on the station detected movement beyond the perimeter. A Vorak strike team was approaching, drawn by the political commotion and rumors of disunity. The chamber erupted in alarm. Delegates began issuing chaotic commands, some calling for evacuation, others for defensive measures. The alien woman's body tensed, ready to fight alone if necessary. Elias placed a hand lightly on her shoulder, not to stop her but to ground her. We will not fight blindly, he said. We will use our minds first. Your anger will guide us, not destroy us. The first Vorak ships entered the detection range, sleek, black, and armed with weapons capable of leveling the station. Panic rippled across the council, and some delegates suggested surrender. Karith's instincts screamed at her to attack immediately, to let her fury explode. Yet Elia's presence reminded her that there was another way, a smarter way. She took a deep breath, letting her anger settle into focused determination. Together, she and Elias moved to the central command console. Karith fed in tactical data while Elias coordinated communications. He sent precise messages to nearby Allied stations, highlighting the Vorak fleet's positions and urging immediate reinforcement. At the same time, he reached out diplomatically to some of the council members who had begun to understand Carith's warnings, convincing them to support a coordinated defensive strategy. The council watched, stunned, as the human and the alien worked in perfect sync. No one had expected humans to combine emotion with logic in such a deliberate way. The alien woman, fueled by her anger, became an instrument of strategy rather than chaos. Her fury, tempered by Elia's calm, allowed her to make split-second calculations that saved lives. As the Vorax ships moved closer, they encountered resistance far more organized than expected. Defensive drones were deployed efficiently. Decoy signals and tactical traps confused the attackers. Communication from multiple sources created the illusion of a much larger force than actually present. Each maneuver relied not on brute force, but on precision, planning, and the clarity that came from controlled emotion. Carith glanced at Elias. He was calm, eyes sharp, hands moving over the control panels with steady confidence. She realized then that humans did not suppress anger, they learned to channel it. They could face fear and violence without being consumed. Her own rage, when combined with his calmness, became a force that the Vorak could not anticipate. Hours passed in tense silence, punctuated by bursts of activity as the Vorak fleet pressed forward and the defenders countered. Carith noticed the council members slowly starting to trust the process. Some species even moved to assist, contributing additional drones and resources. The alien woman felt a strange sense of pride, not for herself, but for the humans standing beside her and the way their combined effort could influence others. When the Vorak strike team finally retreated, unable to penetrate the defenses or break the alliance forming on the station, the chamber was quiet. Carith's chest heaved with exhaustion, but there was satisfaction there too. Not only had they survived, but they had done so without needless bloodshed, and the council had witnessed something new. Anger could be a tool, not just a danger. Elias stepped closer to her. "Your anger saved your people," he said quietly. "And it taught the council a lesson they will not forget." Carith nodded slowly, still catching her breath. "I screamed because I was desperate," she said. "I thought it would change nothing. I thought it would only make them fear me." "You made them listen," Elias said. "Fear listens for a moment. Understanding can last a lifetime." For the first time, Carith felt a flicker of hope that went beyond immediate survival. Perhaps her people could be saved. Perhaps other species could finally see the truth of what was happening. And perhaps, just perhaps, humans could teach the galaxy a new way to deal with anger, not by suppressing it, but by channeling it toward justice and action. As the council convened to discuss the next steps, Carith realized that this was just the beginning. Vorak forces would return, stronger and more determined. But now, she had an ally who understood that rage, when guided, could become a weapon sharper than any blade or cannon. And together, she and Elias would show the galaxy the power of controlled emotion and human ingenuity. Her scream had changed everything, but the calm that followed it had done even more. The first spark of a new alliance, forged not through fear or submission, but through understanding and action, had been lit. And the galaxy would never be the same. Carith stood at the edge of the observation deck, watching the Vorak ships retreat into the darkness of space. Her body was still tense, her claws flexing involuntarily as she tried to release the residual energy of anger and fear that had carried her through the day. Elias Rowan stood beside her, calm and steady as always, his eyes scanning the sensors and monitoring stations. The battle had been won for now, but Carith knew that the Vorak would return, stronger and more relentless than before. The council had finally convened after the crisis, and the atmosphere was tense but different. Gone were the dismissive whispers and cold stares. Now there was cautious respect in the way the delegates spoke. They had witnessed the humans' method, not suppression of anger, but understanding and channeling it towards strategy. That lesson had shaken centuries of rigid protocol and prejudice. Carith turned to Elias. "I never thought anger could be used like that," she said quietly. "I always believed it was only destruction, only chaos, and yet here we are, alive." Elias nodded. "Anger is a signal," he said simply. "It tells us what matters. You let it speak, and it led us to action rather than despair." He paused, scanning the viewport. "Your people deserve more than survival. They deserve a future." Her amber eyes softened, and for the first time she allowed herself to hope. The council had agreed to send aid to her homeworld survivors. Rescue ships were being dispatched to evacuated colonies, and provisional shelters were being organized in allied systems. Carith felt the weight of responsibility, but Elia's presence made it lighter. He had not only guided her anger, but had also helped her find her voice in a galaxy that had too often silenced it. In the days that followed, Carith and Elias worked tirelessly to organize the relief effort. Data streams poured in from scattered survivors, detailing the atrocities of the Vorak Dominion and the struggles of displaced populations. Carith's anger flared with each report, but Elias reminded her to focus, to channel her emotion into actionable solutions. Together, they coordinated rescue fleets, medical supplies, and safe transit corridors for refugees. The alien woman was amazed at the way Elias interacted with the council and other species. He did not command, he communicated. He did not intimidate, he persuaded. His calm, reasoned approach inspired confidence, even among species that had previously dismissed humans as weak or impulsive. Carith began to understand why humanity had survived against impossible odds. They faced emotion and conflict directly, shaping them into tools for survival and progress rather than letting them become chains. One evening, as Carith reviewed reports from a recently liberated settlement, Elias approached her quietly. "The Council has agreed to grant you provisional command over rescue operations," he said. "They trust your judgment now. They trust our judgment." Carith blinked. "Me? Command after everything they would actually." Her voice trailed off, disbelief mixed with hope. "They saw what you can do," Elias said, "and they saw what we can do together. Anger alone would have been dangerous, but with direction it became a force for life, not death." She nodded slowly, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Then we will save them, everyone we can reach. No one else will die if I can prevent it." The human's steady gaze met hers. "Then let's get to work." Over the following weeks, Carith and Elias became a coordinated force of action. They navigated political obstacles, logistical nightmares, and Vorak harassment, always relying on strategy and calm communication rather than brute force. Carith's anger remained a driving energy, but it no longer consumed her. Instead, it sharpened her decisions, guiding her to prioritize and act with precision. The human taught her patience, planning, and the value of alliances. Through him, Carith began to understand that rage could be translated into influence. She used her voice to inspire other alien species, showing them that controlled fury, when combined with human-like strategy, could overcome fear and hesitation. Slowly, allies rallied, offering resources, ships, and aid that had been withheld before due to council indecision or fear of Vorak retaliation. The Vorak, frustrated by the unexpected resistance, attempted a direct assault on one of the rescue convoys. Carith and Elias coordinated the defense with surgical precision. Traps were laid, decoy signals deployed, and Vorak units were intercepted before they could cause significant damage. The council watched in awe as the human and the alien woman turned what could have been a massacre into a demonstration of efficiency, intelligence, and adaptability. During the confrontation, Carith realized something profound. The scream she had released in the council chamber, once raw, uncontrolled, and fueled by despair, had transformed. It had become a weapon not of destruction but of motivation and clarity. Her anger had been tempered by understanding, her desperation channeled into deliberate action. And the galaxy, for the first time, began to recognize that human-style reasoning could complement alien emotion, creating a force far more formidable than either alone. After the Vorak retreated, Karith stood with Elias on the observation deck, watching the last convoy of rescued survivors disappear into safe space. She felt exhaustion in her body but also a deep, resonant satisfaction. Lives had been saved, alliances forged, and a new understanding had begun to ripple through the Council and across species networks. "You have changed more than just the Council," Elias said softly. "You've changed the galaxy's perception of anger, of emotion, and of humanity itself." Karith's gaze softened as she looked at him. "And you've changed me. I thought anger was all I had, but you showed me how to use it, how to turn it into something that matters." Elias smiled faintly. "We learn from each other. That is how we survive. That is how we thrive." In the days that followed, Karith returned to her people, guiding them back to their settlements and helping them rebuild what had been lost. With Elias' counsel, she implemented strategies that combined alien resilience with human ingenuity. Refugee colonies flourished, defenses were strengthened, and survivors were trained not just to endure, but to prepare for the inevitable return of the Vorak Dominion. The Council, inspired by the success of Karith and Elias, began revising long-standing protocols. They encouraged open communication between species, recognized the value of emotion as a signal rather than a threat, and adopted new strategies for crisis response based on observation and reasoning rather than fear. Karith's scream had not only saved her people, it had reshaped the way multiple species approached conflict, leadership, and cooperation. Months later, Karith stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the stars pass by. Elias was beside her, reviewing communications from allied fleets. The galaxy was far from safe, and the Vorak threat still loomed large, but Karith no longer felt helpless. Her anger had become a source of strength, guided by understanding and tempered by strategy. She realized that humans, though fragile in some ways, carried a power that went beyond physical strength, the power to face chaos calmly and turn it into order. When Elias turned to her with a faint smile, Karith knew that the scream she had released that day in the council chamber was not the end of her story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter in which emotion and reason could coexist, guiding action rather than destroying it. The galaxy was changing slowly but irrevocably. Her people were alive. Allies had been gained. Vorak forces had been delayed. And most importantly, Karith understood that she was not alone. Humanity had taught her that calm in the face of fury could be stronger than fury alone. The galaxy was watching, learning, and adapting. And Karith, once a lone scream in a chamber of indifference, had become the voice of change, standing alongside a human who had shown that understanding could save worlds. As the stars stretched endlessly before her, she allowed herself a rare moment of peace. The future was uncertain, the dangers real, but for the first time, Karith felt that they were capable, not just of surviving, but of shaping the galaxy to be a better place. Together, she and Elias would face whatever came next, armed with anger, guided by reason, and strengthened by the unlikely alliance between human and alien. The scream had changed everything, and the calm that followed had ensured that nothing would ever be the same again.